how deep the pain when the world seems not to get it and continues to create divisions, animosity, and hate. How hurtful the othering. We see the purity and innocence of children, and we see the jadedness, the callousness appear inch by inch as the days pass. And so what are we raising these kids for? To inherit this depressing world? How overwhelming and dark it feels. How much can I keep protecting this meager flame from the winds of hatred and division? How gut-wrenching the future these pure souls will inherit. And I've fallen victim to the weight of the world, and perhaps I've taught them the same thing, when I know deep in my soul that hope will always be alive as long as there are children. Because I see it daily as a child falls down and gets up again and again and again and again. It's like the child knows that it's all part of the process. But how easily I've forgotten that with each fall, I'm learning how to correct my stance. I'm gaining strength in all of these muscles, ligaments, and tendons in the 2 feet that will carry me through the end of my earthly life. How easily I've forgotten that falling is actually a gift to learn from. And I've always been greater than the fall. The fall doesn't define me, it's actually aiding me. These children are not inheriting the world we live in, they're inheriting our current narrative of the world. When we feel defeated, we're teaching them hopelessness. But I know deep in my soul that hope will always be alive as long as there are children. The children and youth are not only the future, they are the present. We hold the power in our grasp to narrate the present and the hope that exists. Is that narrative, I'm tired, just make do with your surroundings? Or can we look into the eyes of the innocent soul before us and see a reflection of ourselves? Our childlike curiosity, ambition, and wonder. Our innate understanding that each fall is part of the process to stand more firm. The hope we see in a child is really the unrealized hope we see in ourselves. That is the place we need to go to and come from, because each pair of eyes we look into is the future Martin Luther King Jr., the future Mother Teresa, the future Gandhi, the future Tahirih, the future Thomas Edison, the future Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We recognize the light and potential of each child. The eyes are the window to the soul, and we see the power and divinity of their spirit and what they're capable of. Yet the weight of the world has us forgetting the light that stands before us, because the truth is we've forgotten the light within us. For it is your own reflection that you see in a child. It is your resilience, strength, courage, and purity. Seeing the light in another is a reflection of ourselves. So to every educator out there, whether you are a teacher, principal, coach, director, counselor, dean, aide, parent, you are that light. You are that flame. And in the darkness of this night, we need you more than ever. Turn inwards and feel your power. You are the channel for hope and life in this world. In your belief for creating a new earth for humanity lies the secret to unlocking the light within each hope-filled soul that stands before you, eager to learn, latent with wonder and infinite possibilities. So take a moment to reflect on the question we ask time and time again. What do you want to be when you grow up? And imagine those beaming pair of innocent eyes looking up to you for hope. And realize that our true calling is to be our bold, hopeful, spirit-filled child version of ourselves. You are the hope and the answer. You always have been. Thank you.
All right, episode 52, pHumblePodcast. I'm yours truly, Pej the Maniac. You see me here on my comedy channels. Thanks for joining and watching this. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and illuminate that bell so you don't miss any pHumblePodcast episodes or Pej the Maniac content. So the video you just saw in the open was by none other than Dr. Mona Kiani. She's an old friend of mine, but let me give her the proper intro that she deserves. She was a former middle and high school mathematics teacher, teacher trainer, coach for administrators, and director of partner success at various ed tech startups. Dr. Mona Kiani is passionate about transforming the field of education with engaging real-world learning experiences for students and the community that result in social action. She founded Educate with Purpose, which is what we're going to talk about today, with over 15 years of experience in education and in ed tech, both locally and internationally. She is passionate about addressing the needs of the whole child and engaging families as partners in that endeavor, especially for the most underserved communities. She has a doctorate degree from UC San Diego in educational leadership with research focusing on how to support at-risk students with emotional intelligence, a master's degree in education from UCLA, and a bachelor's degree in managerial economics from UC Davis. Yay, that's my school. She's been a guest lecturer in university teacher ed programs, conferences, and the 2016 recipient of the National Inspired Changemaker Award given by Yale. Mona currently serves on the board of directors for the True Human Excellence Institute in Austin, Texas, and on the board of advisors for Free Fuse. Her diverse experiences within the field of education allow her to best serve the various needs of our partners and as a leader in our organization. Welcome to pHumblePodcast, Dr. Mona Kiani.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Pej. It's nice to see you again after so many years.
It has been quite a long time. Yes. Man, you have done a lot since we met. so that's great. Well, I wanted to jump into this video that we saw in the open here, and it caught my attention when I first saw it, and I immediately reached out to you to have you on, especially during March, Women's History Month, and also the message behind it is very in line with some of my own ideals and ideas regarding purifying the mind, which we discussed offline. But I have the script to this poem. Now, you wrote this poem, obviously. It's beautifully said and written. But talk to me about it. Tell me where the inspiration came from and what you saw that got you creatively to write this and wanted to share it with the world.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, for bringing it to light. I was lucky enough to be a part of a group of educators who met on, actually was like a Facebook group that was called Recharge Your Teacher's Soul. And this group of educators that came together, they meet once a month and they talk about, in the midst of the pandemic and with everything going on, especially within the schooling system, how do we keep our semblance of sanity as educators? And I had an opportunity to join one of those sessions, and it was a group of these incredible women who were in various leadership positions at different organizations in Austin, Texas. Most of them taught in schools or were, directors or coaches within the school system, and some within organizations that support the school system. But all of them were in some level of a leadership role. And what the particular topic of that session was around hope. Where do we find hope? How do we find hope? And I was just floored that these amazing women shared so vulnerably. And they had just met me. And the theme that I kept hearing was that actually it was something that they didn't really recognize on their own, but the hope came from anything that felt like they could connect to their inner child. And I think why I decided to write this poem, and it really wasn't a decision. It was like, I was so inspired. I went to bed that night and I woke up and it just kind of flowed out. And it was kind of a one go. And then I just kind of felt like recording it. And none of that really came consciously to me. It was just like, you're doing this. And it was more special for that reason. And then, you reached out to me. And having this Facebook group, dialogue juxtaposed to what I was seeing on LinkedIn earlier that day, which was teachers are leaving in masses from the school system. And if you actually look at the statistics in 2021, so, this data is a few months old. 44% of teachers are considering leaving. 44%.
Wow.
And as someone who worked on all sides of education, so I was a teacher, I worked in ed tech companies at various levels, and then I got to go back into schools and help train teachers and coach administrators. One of the things that happens to me often is I get messages from teachers on LinkedIn left and right asking me, how do I leave the profession? How do I do what you're doing? How do I get onto the tech side of things? And so I really started to reflect on what is the feeling people are chasing. Mm-hmm. People obviously want to feel valued. They want to feel fulfilled. They want to feel like they're making a difference.
Right.
But ultimately, running away from education is not necessarily going to give you that answer. It's not going to give them that answer. So, oftentimes I actually, if I do get a chance to talk to some of these folks, I really question this decision. And is it just like a fad or something they're really excited about because everybody else is trying to do it? Yeah. Or they want to work from home forever because they got a taste of that. Mm-hmm. And it really made me reflect on the fact that when we talk about this concept of hope, children are the most priceless place to feel hope. Being around a child who is laughing, who is smiling, who is curiously wondering about the world and wandering about the world, it reminds us of all of our innocence, and it reminds us of that inner child. Mm-hmm. And that is actually, as I listened to those women, it was stories that helped them reconnect to that lost part of them, or being with a child where they got to actually see it. Maybe they didn't get to experience it, but they got to witness it, that was truly where hope came from.
That's amazing. And I agree. Also being a teacher in the private sector, but also in private schools, I see it. And where is that high percentage of teachers who are reaching out, wanting to either do your job or do a job similar, or wanting to just leave the teaching force? What was the overlying reason behind that? What did you find out?
I think that the pandemic was just a catalyst. Yeah. I don't actually think, yes, it has been difficult. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you that I kind of left teaching about 6, 7 years ago and got into ed tech. And it was kind of a coincidental thing. I was finishing my doctorate and I wanted to be a professor. And this was like, okay, sure, I'll try this tech thing I thought I was going to do it for a year. And realistically, from the moment I stepped into schools and, was working in ed tech, people were already asking me, like, how do I leave teaching? And so I can't say, I think that the pandemic was a catalyst, but I don't think that it is the reason. I think a lot of times the reason that these teachers want to leave the profession is partially because teachers, and I'm a former teacher, I taught for a decade, we have this mindset that we're just teachers. So when they see this opportunity, this door, this window of, wait a minute, I can join a different workforce where money is going to talk, money is going to compensate me for how hard I'm working. There is potential for upward mobility. What? that doesn't exist as a teacher.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone from the outside world just thinks like, oh, well, aren't you going to graduate from being a teacher and become an administrator? And many of us teachers are like, I would never want to be an administrator. No offense to administrators, but that's not my path. And so it is this feeling of wanting to grow, wanting to continue to grow, and wanting to continue to feel compensated or, appreciated for the work that we're doing. And those are a couple places that literally, I actually was just thinking about this before we hopped on, that if the education system made some of these minor tweaks that mimicked startups, that mimicked the agile workforce in the corporate world, it will be incredible the way that everyone's going to want to be a teacher, because I truly believe, and as I've worked with more and more adults, and now as a consultant, when I work, with founders of companies who left whatever position they were doing and they came into education, a human being's true joy is when they feel like they can be of service to others. And what better, kind of more direct connection to that than working with youth or children and getting to teach.
No, you're 100% right on that. And I just feel like teaching, it's a fundamental of growth. We all need teachers, whether it's in the school foundation or school sector versus at home as a parent or wherever, right? We have people we look up to. I still have people I look up to at 36 that I'm like, sometimes I go to, and even now, and I ask for their advice, because it either gives me confirmation in whatever decision I'm making to either continue it, or they say, maybe you need to go this way instead, or, and I value that. And kids obviously value that. And I see that as a teacher myself, and you see it too. So you're so right when you talk about the educational system has to tweak it just a bit and treat teachers like financially, they should treat them like they are the leaders of the startups or the CEOs of the startups, or even part of a team of a startup, because though that is the hot job to have right now, and everybody's jumping on that. They've made shows about it now, like on all these platforms, but without that teaching, none of those could have gone to that point. So it's like we're almost taking from the teaching side to pay for these startups, and it doesn't have to be that way at all. Now, have you looked at education in other parts of the world and seeing how it's treated over there, like other countries in Europe, maybe, or in the Middle East, or because I know I went to school in the Middle East. I did,
cool.
Yeah, I had schooling as a young kid, so this is fitting with this topic. I finished 2 years up to second grade in Iran, and when I first came to elementary school in the States, it was like I was way ahead
Hmm.
with the subject matter, how far they're teaching as a third grader here versus where I was as a third grader.
Mhm.
Um, so as a kid, to me, I mean, it was just like, oh, I know this, but I didn't think much about it. Like, I didn't think,
Mhm.
now I reflect and I'm like, that I feel like we could do way more in the United States with that,
Mhm.
or just in the West in general. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I'm sure you have some juicy information on that.
Yeah. Well, my frame of reference is I grew up in the US, but I was a teacher in Chile for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And so getting to teach internationally, it was a different situation. I taught in a private school. I taught in an international private school, which feels very different. And I swore after I taught in an international private school, which was literally the mecca of teaching, the
Yeah.
experience as a teacher, I swore I would never teach in the US again because the conditions were just intolerable. Um, the conditions of teaching in an international private school, which might also be a local private school, I've never taught in a private school in the US, so I can't speak from that. Um, and maybe you have more on that, but the pay and the recognition and the growth potential, all of those things mirrored what would give someone job fulfillment and satisfaction. And so it attracted top talent. It also retained top talent, that particular school and kind of system of schools. And teachers got to be teachers. I've noticed, and as I've studied the education system and I've worked at all levels, so I started in LA Unified, which we know is a massive district with a lot of students who fit in the category of being at risk, with a lot of inner city schools. And so what systems like that do versus a charter school system, for example, or a private school system, is the more the numbers are showing students are not performing well, the more there's top-down mandates. In fact, in my first few years teaching, I remember we had a standardized test we had to give at the end of every week. So, and I'm a former math teacher. So literally day by day, my days were prescribed. Like, this is what you write on the board. This is the standard you write on the board. This is how you write it. These are the worksheets you give. This is what you're teaching. This is how you teach it. Teachers come into the field. Nobody comes into the field of teaching to be a scribe, to be a robot, to be a copy machine.
Yeah.
We come in with this inspiration to be a creator.
Yep.
And we want to inspire and motivate and cultivate.
Yep.
And if we don't get to express that, then you've literally robbed the joy of being a teacher. And most of us, we come in knowing the pay is going to be terrible. We know that there's going to be all these other things that are going to make this job tough. But because we feel so impassioned to make a difference in the world, to create, to cultivate, to motivate, and to inspire, we are willing to put up with some of that nonsense. But now rob us of that. And what is it that we're fulfilled
There's no
by
motivator.
anymore? There's no motivator.
Yeah.
And that then translates directly into the students. Think about the students who reflect back on, I didn't really like science, but then Mrs. Barry was the most, she just loved science.
Yeah.
And now I'm like really excited about science,
Yeah.
And so it takes the adults loving what they're doing and being passionate about what they're doing for that energy transfer to reach students. And so, unfortunately, the kind of more taxed the system is in terms of, underperforming students, they then slam all the, more directives, which in my opinion, it needs to be less directives, but you also need to know how to hire people properly. You need to incentivize people. And then you need to give them the space to create and to flourish so that they're not just robots. So that's, one thing that I think the private system, because they have those resources, and the students perform well, they release the chokehold so that a teacher can finally be a teacher.
It's 100%. In my opinion, it's 100% the reason behind teachers, wanting out. And like you said, the pandemic was a catalyst, but it wasn't the reason. I think this is right. This is like we were all born to use our creativity, whatever field that is. Either if it's in the subject fields or like I love teaching because I'm a musician. Like I love teaching because I love acting. I love, doing comedy. Like, and I use elements from those fields that I also have, which I'm creating and building in my teaching methods, now, like, I have a lot of experience on the private side. But I had worked with a couple public schools through like contracts, but for like musicals, I would train a bunch of inner city kids to do a Lion King play, for example,
Cool.
or Beauty and the Beast. But I would get to see the differences. It was right in my face, like where the limitations were on the public side versus the private side. And for them to try to work together, it made it tough because the private side has a lot more, I guess, calculated risks that they want to take with the creativity. But there was a lot of loopholes we had to go through. Like we kept hitting obstacles from the public side and it wasn't the school itself. It was whatever mandates that were put on from the county or the district. So I'm proud of the two plays I directed still, like with those schools. It came out well, and the kids at the end of the day were wanting to continue. And so that to me was the biggest metric was, they're enjoying it. Like, and at the end of the day, if they're enjoying being in school for this, then we can, like you said, find ways to make it enjoyable from the teacher's perspective and the student's perspective. So where do you think things are going to be headed? Now you are, explain to the audience where you are now on the you're on the tech side now, or educate with purpose?
Yeah. And, for the listeners, I just kind of want to demystify what tech is like. I mean, working in tech can be really great as well, but a lot of teachers want to work for an ed tech company, and then they'll most naturally go into what we call a school success or partner success or customer success role, where, when the tech is sold, they then support that account and aid them through. Now, on the tech side of things, you are also given mandates and micromanaged and given scripts on how you need to do things. And the most fulfilling moments that I had working in tech was when I got to be a teacher. When I got to create professional development and I got to deliver it. And I was like, dang, okay, at some point when I retire, I'm going back into the classroom like that, and that's been the ultimate goal. And so I want to demystify that the carrot that's still too sweet and is still going to attract many teachers is the fact that pay is going to be a lot better. And then not always a lot better, but better. And then there's also going to be more of the flexible lifestyle, working from home, which is going to entice people. So, but I do want to kind of demystify it for people who are like, no, I'm going to be able to finally get treated like an adult and not be micromanaged. That's absolutely not necessarily true. So I actually left tech because after working several years in it for a few different companies, what I saw, and all of the companies I worked with were amazing and they were doing really great things, solving the part of the problem that they, intended to solve. But I also knew that a lot of these were not going to the root of the issue. And I've gotten a chance, I've been fortunate to get to work with many district administrators across the nation. And when you talked about, it's not the school's fault, it's the district or the county that's sending down these mandates. Well, I've sat in rooms with district administrators as they were deciding which assessments they were making mandatory. And they're making the best guess that they can make based on the information at hand. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes they're also feeling the pressure of delivering the numbers. Everybody is obsessed with the data. And what that does, and I love data, I'm a math teacher, okay, by trade. But what that's doing is it's only giving you one piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And as we have very clearly recognized as a nation that mental, social, and emotional health is more important than we've given it credit for in the past, well, sometimes the numbers are actually sabotaging what we need to focus on. Yeah. And so what I decided to develop was a company called Educate with Purpose. Mm-hmm. And what we do is I work with district administrators and school administrators to just press the pause button for a moment and re-examine the whole purpose of education. Why are we doing any of it? Mm-hmm. Why are we teaching the standards we're teaching? Why are we giving the tests we're giving? Why are we pushing kids to, perform for success, to get to college, to get a career? Why any of it? Mm-hmm. And as we restructure the whole purpose of education, understanding, our purpose is outdated. The purpose we have is based on, 100 years ago for the way that our nation was going and the way standards were developed and why they were developed. And it's no longer serving us now and definitely not for the future. Yeah. So I'm working with these leaders as they're making these really tough decisions and kind of in survival mode themselves, giving them a chance to exhale and kind of zoom out. And when we can really re-examine the purpose, then align all the experiences to match that purpose, you're going to significantly revamp with these small tweaks. You're going to revamp the whole climate, culture, and kind of the feeling that teachers and administrators have in the school system. And so that's really where I'm focusing my energy right now, because we're in a crisis. And if we don't make some big changes right now, things are going to be changing over the next year radically anyway. Mm-hmm. So if we're not intentional about how that is going, it could definitely go for the worse.
That's wonderful. It's it definitely gives hope to me, and I'm sure other teachers and even the students, because I think you're right. We're using 100-year-old methods to when there was no technology like we have today. There was mental health was taboo. Like it was like all these things that were not even talked about 100 years ago. For crying out loud, we were in World War I. Like we were just coming out of a huge war back then. So anyway, it's good to see that this is happening with with this company, Educate with Purpose. Is it a nonprofit or is it a?
No, it's an LLC.
LLC, okay.
And, one of the things that I commonly get as someone's reaction is, okay, but what about the numbers? Because we still have to get funding.
Of course.
And to get funding, we have to be able to prove that the numbers, that what we're doing is working. Yeah. And actually, over my decade-long career as a teacher, even though I told you we had standardized tests at the end of every week, mm-hmm. I got to a point where I was like, I'm not playing this game.
Yeah.
So I actually have been testing a method of teaching, and I've coined it now. It's called social action learning. And essentially taking everything that I have to teach for standards, and instead of these just being dead end standards of, okay, I'm just learning the Pythagorean theorem because it's on the test. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, students, you're learning it because you're exercising a muscle that you're going to need to use later. That's the answer teachers give when they don't have a real world application for the particular thing. Or, oh, when you're trying to figure out the distance between your house and Jill's house, this is the, hypotenuse, and nobody's measuring that. So that oftentimes these are the, canned answers we give.
Yeah.
Now, what's phenomenal is when we make some of these shifts in what we're doing, you're still going to be teaching the standards, but it's the framing, it's the purpose, it's the why and the how you're teaching it that makes all the difference. And I will tell you that in every institution that I worked in, my students most of the time outperformed the rest of the students in the school. And so the numbers will follow. Why? Because then you've literally hit what intrinsically motivates students. So now I have no motivation issues. I have no student engagement it's like a non-issue in my class. Yeah. Students are hungry for learning. They're asking me for more because they now see how these tools are going to be relevant to their lives and them having an impact on the world.
That's amazing. That's and that's super true. I think the kids are I think one thing for me and this Educate with Purpose, it seems you said student action learning. Is that what it was?
Social action
learning. You're right. And I feel like that comes from that change is necessary. And the whole idea of change is a scary thought for a lot of institutions or a lot of public sectors, even districts and higher, because we tested something that worked maybe a long time ago, and we're not letting that evolve. But everything has to evolve in order for the kids to learn and teachers to want to teach. And motivation factor is so important, especially in a time like now where we're not able to see each other as much in person. We're not able to interact, which is something that the soul needs, I think, and I think when the soul is hungry, then the physical body and the mind are not going to be as motivated to continue learning or even pushing. We can fight. We were built to, fight the uncomfortable moments, but only for so long, right? Like you said, teachers are going to eventually want to tap out and either whether it's financial, but like you said, I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason they got in is because they loved it, and we need to tap in with the help of Educate with Purpose to let them see that that there is hope, that there is ways to continue, and it's just a shifting of the mindset. So
can I share one really cool anecdote?
Go ahead, please.
So as I shifted the way that I taught, I went from teaching the standards, because, my original purpose for why I was teaching, what's the purpose of education? I was like, well, I guess it's like to instill a love for learning and critical thinking, right? And a lot of teachers will say that sort of answer. Then I realized, okay, but for what purpose? Okay, well, I can instill this critical thinking and love for learning so that they can better understand the world around them. But still, for what purpose? Okay, so they can understand the world around them so they can do something about it to make the world a better place. So now it gives them a sense of agency of I belong in this world and I am a change agent. I can do something about the ills that I see around me. And then the final stage of the evolution of the purpose of education is all of those things. So I learn to understand the world around me so I can be that change agent. The final step is starting now. We don't have to wait till they're adults. They can be doing this work now. And so I transformed all the major topics that I was teaching as a math teacher into these social action learning projects where now the math was necessitated in order for them to be of service to the world. So there's nothing that's going to motivate a human being more than to feel like you get to make a positive contribution to the world, because we all want to know we matter. And so again, that's why there was no motivation issues anymore, right? Now they're like, okay, wait, how do I use this formula again? Because I need to be able to do this in order to, help this situation. So the coolest part of all of this was it had been when the pandemic started, I had left the classroom. It had been like, 5-6 years since I was a teacher. And some of these students I hadn't had for about 15 years. So it had been a while since I had been connected to some of these students. My students were my former students, who my oldest student right now is 33 years old. So to give some context, and a lot of them have babies and families and the whole thing. And so many of my students from all the different places I taught reached out to me, and they still call me Miss. Miss, now we should do something.
Oh, wow.
What can we do?
Yeah.
And I was so heartwarmed that they had this fire within them that, maybe they forgot a lot of the math concepts, but they had this flame of, I have a role in making the world a better place. And instead of a feeling of hopelessness and despair when the pandemic hit, they went into, we can help. And what better lesson could I have hoped for than to instill that in my students? And so we actually band together, and it was great. I organized, I blasted on social media. Hey, our time has come. You guys, we've been preparing for this for years. And students from the 1, 2, 3, 4 different schools that I taught at were all on one Zoom meeting together and meeting each other and sharing memories. And then we brainstormed, what can we do about the pandemic? So this was at the very beginning of the pandemic. And this is when we still really didn't know what it was. And the thing that we really needed to do was just all support one another while we figured it out. And one of the big things that, we might remember was this whole concept of okay, until we really figure out what it is, everybody stay home, so that we can figure it out. And so there was that Instagram sticker that was the stay home, every time you're staying home. And so we started a campaign around why we stay home. And this was youth led, because it was a lot of the youth who were not staying home. They're like, I'm 14 and I just want to go skateboard with my friends. And so we were seeing this lack of, unity in movement. And so the youth that I worked with, we started this whole thing of why we stay home. And we created this kind of campaign where people would record videos of themselves of why we stay home and use the hashtag. And so anyway, I can send that to you also if you want to put that in the notes.
Absolutely.
Share that video. We kind of boiled it down to a short clip. I think it's a minute and a half, but it was just, there's no greater joy,
Listen, that is amazing to hear that it came to fruition, and those years of noticing that these changes are necessary, and the why, right? The why is so important for these kids, and to bring it all back together. And yes, I will, please do send me that, because I will have that in the description of this podcast. But so to bring it full circle, is this whole episode started on this video about children, and you titled it eloquently, there is hope where there are children. And I think that is so huge. And my own experience, and I'm sure millions of teachers out there will agree, that if the kids don't know what the purpose is behind things, right, and for us to both from the teacher side and on the student side, when we start to care about why we're doing things the way we're doing things,
right?
And I've seen it. I've seen good responses to these, healthy responses, and I've also seen not so healthy, and I've been guilty of it.
Sure.
It takes patience, right? It takes some patience at times, and it takes reflecting on why they did ask why. You have to think, put yourself in their shoes. They're genuine. Kids are genuine.
Right.
Children are not just trying to troll the classroom, right? Sometimes they do, but there's a reason behind that too. Is because they're not getting what they're thirsting for. So they turn to distracting, because they're no longer getting the real core and the real juice of learning, which is the why. And whatever we teach, whatever it is, whatever subject, and so beautiful that you saw that come back and they reached out to you. I still think about some of my teachers back in middle school and high school, and I remember them by name. I remember stories they taught me, and they taught me the why. And those are the ones that stuck. And it's there's a reason that happens, I think, because we are all, like you said, we all want to have a purpose. We want to contribute to the world. And that doesn't start at an age. It's always there. As soon as we're able to learn.
Right.
So I just want to read the last part of your poem here. So this goes out. So the teachers who, myself included, I'm kind of talking to myself as well, but to all the teachers who are fatigued, either because of the pandemic or because of all these regulations and you got to do this and that, just understand those kids are the hope and the answer, and they're the future, and they're gonna, just like Dr. Mona said, they come back, and everything you teach now, and when you treat it with care and love and patience and treat it with answering the whys, and you actually approach it with that amount of passion, it actually helps someone's future, and those kids are going to carry that forward and pay it forward to their own kids, and if they become teachers. But I believe teachers is not just an occupation. It's everybody has a role in that, starting with your own kids that you have, and then when they go off to the school system. Listen, I'm very thankful that you came on today. I really appreciate your time. I do want people to be able to learn more about Educate with Purpose. Where do they go to find more information about that?
Yeah. So people can email me, mona@edwithpurpose.com, or head into the website, which is www.educatewithpurpose.com, or follow us on Instagram, which is just @educatewithpurpose. So any of those forms, we'll get that message, and happy to work with anyone, collaborate with anyone, help inspire anybody. But yeah, I mean, let's turn this around and remember that where there are children, that's where the hope is. So as we're trying to run away from schools because we're trying to find hope elsewhere, it actually, and part of that last part of the poem where I'm, that question we are constantly asking kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
It's like, as an adult, our most fulfilling moments is when we get to act like a child again.
Yeah.
Where we're full of wonder, where we're not, uncertain about our abilities. We are full of confidence. There's so much possibility ahead. We're playful, we're laughing, we're connecting with people. And so it's, I want to just encourage all teachers who are feeling super burnt out, or administrators who are feeling burnt out, to just take a moment and connect to your inner child. So even if that means, like, just give yourself some grace and go play. Go think about when you were a kid and all you wanted to do was go see your best friend. Go see your best friend.
Yeah.
Your inbox will not be empty when you die. So you don't need to clear it out tonight. So
It's
go
so
play
true.
a little. And the more we can connect to the child within us, the more we will show up for these kids and continue to, be reciprocated and met with their hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any trouble acting like a child. So I, my mom will remind me of that, but it's
That's
good
awesome.
though. You have to, I mean, that is our purest form. And as Mona said, you can't forget that, as adults. Adulting doesn't mean we're boring and we're just these, negative people that just look at everything as half empty. We need to remember that, because that actually helps the kids, the real kids that are out there right now. And last time I checked, there are children everywhere. So that poem is very fitting. And by the way, is Educate with Purpose working nationwide, or is it just for? It is? Okay.
Nationwide, and open to working internationally. So if, people across the globe, I'm actually in a conversation with us, a group in China right now as well. So
Wow.
when there are no limits, you know, and,
That's
and
great.
this purpose is really universal, which is to really, you know, be a change agent in the world and create the world we want to live in. So that knows no geographic or language barriers or cultural differences. So
That's great. And it's okay to not know all the answers, everyone. It's okay, because
absolutely.
that's the whole point. We're learning together. That collaboration is one of the biggest answers. And I think we are taught incorrectly that, you know, chase whatever you're trying to do, and kind of like just have tunnel vision and just go for it. I don't agree with that. I think we got to welcome other people and welcome different, like complete opposite opinions to what you would have had, because when we start listening more than wanting to tell people, that's where the real growth happens, in my opinion. But I've seen it come to fruition, and I think that is a big part of growth as humanity in general, not just for kids. So
Absolutely.
Dr. Mona, thank you so much for joining. Everyone, I will have all of the information that Mona mentioned here and also in the description. You can follow me for some comedic relief, Pej the Maniac, on my YouTube channel, as well as pHumblePodcast, same channel, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. Thank you all for joining. This was episode 52 with Dr. Mona Kiani. Thank you, Mona, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.